Welcome back on the AM show. Thank you so much for your company. At this point in the show, we dig into COVID-19 matters, specifically with regard to vaccination. All you need to know about vaccines and your immune system, that's the discussion we're having currently. And let me just let you know off the bat that you can call into the program, share your thoughts, your concerns, your questions, and let us know what is on your mind. The number to call 0302 211 691 extension 2. You can also reach out to us on social media with all your thoughts with the hashtag AM Show. Let me at this juncture say a very good morning to Dr. Yaube Diakon, who joins us via Zoom. Doc, good morning.
Good morning.
Pleasure to have you join in for this discussion. Let's start from here. One of the things I am seeing coming up, a lot of people being afraid of getting vaccinated. In fact, in Nalerigu, some students have been sharing how they feel scared of taking the vaccine because their parents have told them the contents of the vaccines might cause harm to them or even death. So let's start from here. What goes into these vaccines? What are the ingredients, the contents of the vaccines?
All right, thank you, Benjamin. A vaccine is actually pretty simple. Basically, you have your antigen or whatever it is that is going to try to induce the immune response. And then you may have some sort of an adjuvant to try to enhance that response. And then you have probably like a preservative, because obviously you don't want the vaccine to go off too quickly. So it's usually a very simple mixture. Different vaccines will have slightly different components, but as we've said repeatedly, every vaccine is extensively tested. So, they have proven to be safe before they are released on the market and are administered. Currently, I think in terms of children, currently the vaccines are actually we're not using the vaccines in children under 16. I think in fact in Ghana, currently the guideline is 18 and above. So currently parents probably need not worry. There are a few trials in the UK right now in children under the age of 16. Once that data is available, the Ghana Health Service will likely adjust their recommendations. But for now, regardless of that, though, everybody should remain confident that these vaccines are safe. There is nothing within the vaccine that is going to harm anyone.
Okay, so from what you scientists will call mRNA and lipids to salts and sugars, these are the general components of some vaccines that we know of, and we can talk about the Modernas and the rest. But I want us to hammer on that point, because some people are thinking the contents of the vaccines could be detrimental to our health here in Africa. So are these the general things? Some of the things I've mentioned, the salts, the sugars, the lipids, are these the things we should expect to be in these vaccines for COVID?
Yes. Like I said, vaccines, there's actually not a huge amount of stuff in a vaccine. What you are referring to, lipids are basically like fats. Sometimes you need lipids in order for material to cross a membrane. Or to stay in a certain formation in a solution. You mentioned mRNA. There are certain vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, that are mRNA vaccines. That is just a little bit of genetic material that is going to allow the cells to produce the spike protein that is on the surface of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and so it stimulates your immune system. The AstraZeneca and Sputnik 5 vaccines also contain genetic material, also contain RNA, but in this case, the RNA is within a viral vector. So it's within a harmless virus that is going to enter the cells and then is going to cause the expression of these proteins. So it's, you're actually trying to achieve the same thing. All you're trying to achieve with a vaccine is to allow your immune system to recognize the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And there are a number of different methodologies to do that, but they all typically result in the same effect. And like I said, these are all safe. They have been carefully tested. And there's, I think the mRNA, there's the concern about will it change your own genetic material. That cannot happen. The RNA is purposefully unstable. So once it enters and does what it's supposed to do, it's disintegrated. It's not going to hang around. The AstraZeneca and Sputnik 5 vaccines, like I said, they're within harmless viruses. Those viruses also will be unable to establish a full infection, and so will also be lost. So pretty much after about probably no more than 21, maybe 30 days after your vaccine, there's really no residue. There's nothing left from the vaccine except what we hope is a stimulated immune system.
Okay, now you just made mention of the Sputnik V from Russia, and I have a bit of a concern with that, and I'm sure others do, so you could break it down for us. I know it's not got full approval from the WHO yet. However, it happens to be one of those that we've, accepted to use in our country together with the AstraZeneca.
No, it has not yet.
Yes. Yeah, so what is the status of that, especially as we are consenting to use it?
Well, not every vaccine that is used in a country necessarily is going to be, it has to be approved to WHO. There are a number of regulatory bodies around the world. In fact, Mrna vaccine has not been approved by the WHO, for instance, because they have just not submitted it for approval. However, the US FDA has approved it, and so it's being used in the US. So the vaccine approval process it's a little bit interesting, and it's somewhat politicized. As a scientist, I try not to get into too much of the politics of vaccine regulation. But the bottom line is every country is responsible for deciding what vaccines to use in their country. So the WHO can provide another layer of confidence. And so a number of companies will submit their vaccines to the WHO or the European Medical Agency or the US FDA, because these are regarded as sort of the leading institutions around the world. So AstraZeneca was recently approved by the WHO, even though the UK started using it, a couple of months before the WHO approved it, because the UK's own FDA approved it. Similarly, Pfizer, Moderna were used in the US. And as I said, Moderna has not been submitted yet to the WHO. Pfizer has been and has been approved. So I would hope that the Russian government would submit Sputnik 5 to the WHO, because certainly I agree with you, it would give countries like Ghana a little bit more confidence when using it. But Sputnik 5 has been approved in 30 other countries besides Ghana. So our FDA is tasked with making the determination. So our FDA receives the dossier on the vaccine and then is required to make the recommendation. I, as a scientist, I do agree that AstraZeneca has been tested broadly around the world. AstraZeneca was even trialed in South Africa. And so has received a stamp, has received approval in a number of countries and has been submitted to WHO for approval. As far as I know, Sputnik 5 has not yet been submitted, so it cannot be evaluated by the WHO, although it has been tested extensively in Russia. But of course, we would like to see, and we would hope that our FDA and our Ghana Health Service would push, since we are purchasing Sputnik 5, would push for continued evaluation of it outside of Russia. The evidence from Russia is very strong. It's 91% effective. It was tested in well over 20,000 people. But of course, those were largely Russian people. So as it is being now rolled out in a number of countries, it's in 5 African countries right now. It would be great if that data was made available just to provide another layer of confidence about the efficacy. The safety, I believe, is not a concern at all. But it would help us to know, for instance, how well does it work against variants that we find circulating. AstraZeneca vaccine, as I'm sure everybody's aware, was found to have certain challenges with the variant found in South Africa. It would be good to continue to follow up, even in as we roll out vaccines in Ghana. We need to continue to follow to see whether or not we need to shift our vaccine menu, as it were, based on the variants that are circulating here.
Okay, so I just want a simple yes or no answer on this before we move to the next question. So the Sputnik V, especially considering it's only been tested on Russians, there is then the possibility, just as we saw with AstraZeneca, that maybe a different strain, or maybe here in Africa, let's say specifically Ghana, its potency may not be as high as 91%. There's that possibility, right?
Yes, there is that possibility. But I would also add, there are certain variants in Ghana that AstraZeneca has not been tested against. So there is the possibility that even AstraZeneca would have reduced potency in Ghana, which is why it is incredibly important that we collect this data as we roll out this vaccine, so that if we need to adjust our strategy, we can do it very quickly. There's really no way of knowing till you start rolling out the vaccine, which is why I said, as far as safety goes, we are not worried. This vaccine, neither of these vaccines is going to harm anybody, but we want to protect our population as much as possible. And so we need to keep studying. But yes, simple yes or no. Yes, it is that there is a possibility that these vaccines may not work as well here because we haven't trialed the vaccines here. And I've even heard Ghana Health Service officials talking about this is why in the future Ghana should be open to trials, because till we trial it, we never really know for sure how well it's going to work. But, so that's another discussion. But
okay.
I hope that answers your question.
It does. Now, here in Africa, I've been looking at the statistics. Asia practically leading the world in terms of the number of vaccinations. Other parts of the world, Africa is at the very bottom in terms of vaccines delivered to people on our soil. And yesterday, well, Ghana blazing the trail in terms of the COVAX program. But that is partly because a lot of people are suspicious about the vaccines. Now, globally, with those shots that have been given to other people in different parts of the world, what are the side effects we have seen in some of these people? So
there have been very few serious adverse events. Majority of the side effects have been pain at the site of injection, redness. A few people have had maybe headaches or fever or chills lasting maybe a day or two. And these are all very, I would say, standard effects of receiving a vaccine. They are not specific to the COVID-19. Anybody who's had a tetanus shot will remember how painful it can be in your arm for a few days and your arm feels a little bit stiff. Though these are normal side effects of getting a vaccine. So the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine largely are headache, fever, maybe some pain in your arm, and lasting maybe no more than a day or a day and a half. So those are a few people have had some allergic reactions, and that is more based on their own underlying allergies. And so I know that in certain countries, the vaccine is, if you have known severe allergies, they are asking that you do not take the vaccine. But in general, those have also been very, very minor effects. I mean, they've been in, a few out of every million doses given has had like some sort of allergic reaction. So it's highly, like I said, these vaccines are largely very, very safe. And there have been very few reports of any serious adverse events.
Now, you've spoken about known severe allergies. That brings up another question. People with asthma and other comorbidities have also been very concerned, worrying that, well, maybe taking the shot might only compound my situation if anything goes wrong. What would you say to such people who have fear of taking the vaccine?
Well, as far as I know, there is no evidence that people with asthma are contraindicated. In fact, asthma is a known risk factor for COVID-19. So people with asthma would actually fall into the first category of people who are going to be offered the vaccine. They are at increased risk of severe disease from COVID. As far as I can tell from what I've seen, there's no evidence that asthmatics would have an adverse reaction to the vaccine. The allergies we are referring to are different allergies, sort of more severe allergies. Besides, asthma is not your classical sort of allergy, as it were. But anyway, asthmatics, I believe, should be clamoring for the vaccine because they are at increased risk of severe consequences if they actually got COVID-19. So if someone is an asthmatic, I would actually recommend, of course, in consultation with your clinician, but I would recommend that you take the vaccine.
Right. Before the next question, let me just let you know, this is all for you out there watching us. We want you to be informed to know as much as possible. So you can call that number 0302 211 691 extension 2 with all your questions, all your concerns. I'm not the expert. Dr. Bediako is an immunologist and he'll answer them for you. So call that number on your screen, or you can also reach out to us on social media with the hashtag AMShow. Another question that I've seen coming up a lot nowadays has to do with people who already have COVID-19. There's a 2-week, cycle to emerge from. People who already have it. Some of them are wondering, do I still take the shot? Or better still, can I take the shot if I have COVID-19?
So the current guidelines are, yes, everybody, regardless of your COVID status, should take the shot. If you have recovered from COVID, you still need to get vaccinated because it appears, the evidence suggests that natural infection, so getting COVID on your own, does not induce sufficient immunity to protect you. In Ghana, there are lots of examples of people who've had COVID multiple times. So even if you've recovered from COVID, yes, you should get the shot. If you are currently infected with COVID, the only guidelines are that if you are symptomatic, so if you have fever or other symptoms, then they would ask you to wait. That is just a general principle. During vaccinations, they don't vaccinate people who are currently ill. So if you are currently ill, you would wait till you have recovered before you get the vaccine. But if you are fine, if you have no symptoms, basically they are not planning to test people before you get the vaccine. So if you have no symptoms, if you're physically fit and you are called upon to take the vaccine, then you take it, regardless of whether you are asymptomatically infected or not. The only people who would delay the vaccine will be those who are physically ill. For whatever reason. It doesn't even have to be COVID. If you have malaria, you have something else going on, if you're physically ill, they will wait till you recover before you are vaccinated. And I think that is just a general vaccination policy in Ghana.
Another thing that has come up, I know in some parts of the country, some parts of the world, I should say, pregnant people are getting vaccinated, in Israel, for example. But here we have our own policy when it comes to, pregnant women. But what generally across the world is pertaining when it comes to those who are planning on getting pregnant or those who already are pregnant? What are the dynamics with regard to taking COVID-19 vaccines?
I haven't reviewed the literature for the Pfizer vaccine, but for AstraZeneca, the AstraZeneca vaccine is current. There is not a lot of data supporting, there's not a data of its trial in pregnant women. Typically, vaccines have to be, there's a separate sort of testing that's done because of concerns about potentially affecting the unborn child. It's a minimal risk, but you don't want to really mess around. So currently, the advice is that pregnant women will not be vaccinated till there is data supporting the safety of this vaccine in pregnant women. So currently, the AstraZeneca vaccine is not being administered to pregnant women. If you are planning on getting pregnant, that is not a problem. You can still get the vaccine. It's really about whether, if you are pregnant, it's not really so much a future problem. It's just if you are pregnant, doctors want to be more careful in terms of anything that might affect the pregnancy. But if you are not yet pregnant and you're thinking of getting pregnant, that has nothing to do with this. You should still get vaccinated because actually pregnant women are a risk group when it comes to COVID. They are more susceptible. So in actual fact, if you are thinking of having a baby, my advice would be get your vaccine before you try to get pregnant. Now that we have vaccines in Ghana, you might delay your plans by a few months, get your vaccine, and then you can think about getting pregnant so that at least you are protected during your pregnancy.
Right. Let me just announce once more that you can call through and share your thoughts. 0302-211-691 extension 2. The number is actually on your screen, and you can also reach out to us on social media. Doc, on to the next one. Initially, I asked you about, those who felt, well, I have not got the virus or have comorbidities and the rest. Do I need to take the shot? How about those who have got COVID-19, have recovered, and so they have the antibodies for about 90 days, plus or minus, like we know? Do they also, within this period, if they've recovered, develop the antibodies, do they need to take a shot? Won't it be like a double dose?
Well, there's nothing wrong with having as many antibodies as possible. You cannot overdose on antibodies. So first of all, that should not be a concern. Secondly, as I said before, when you are naturally infected with a pathogen, you generate a very broad antibody response. Now, for some pathogens, that antibody response is highly protective. For other pathogens, even though you have antibodies, the antibodies don't necessarily protect you. They are there, they can be measured, but they're not necessarily highly protective. It appears that COVID-19 falls into this category. So people who have had COVID, yes, they have antibodies, but a large number of them do not. The antibodies don't seem to really protect them because these people can get infected again. Vaccines are designed to induce a large number of antibodies targeting a specific part of a pathogen. And that usually means that they induce a more protective response, in that it's a very focused response, as opposed to the very broad antibody response that you might get from natural infection. So With COVID-19, at least, it appears that you do need to get vaccinated even if you have been exposed. There is some suggestion that people who have had it before, getting a single dose instead of the double dose might be sufficient because you've already been primed. So when you get your first dose of the vaccine, that stimulates your immune system sufficiently that you then have high protection. But that would mean doing antibody tests for everybody to determine your antibody level before we vaccinate. Currently, my understanding is the Ghana Health Service is not going to do that. It may be something to consider if we have a shortage of vaccine. So if we don't have enough vaccine to immunize all 20-odd million people that we want to do, and we start running low, then my advice would be for us to begin to consider segmenting people based on their antibody titers and then deciding who to give a double dose and who to give a single dose. But right now, we are working upon the assumption that we will secure enough antibody to give everybody 2 doses. And in that case, then we just simplify the situation and give everybody 2 doses, and then everybody is protected.
Right. So if I understand you clearly, I mean, just to break it down, you would also be implying that if we had the mechanisms in place, if we could afford it as a country to test everybody for antibodies, for everybody who has had the coronavirus, at some point, like I have, then you would know, oh, Benjamin has, enough antibodies, and so he would need only 1 shot rather than 2, which would actually mean we could have saved a number of shots and maybe cover a larger segment of our population. Is that correct?
Yes, that is what I'm saying. Some countries are doing that, but I think in the US is not doing that. The UK is not doing that. So it's not like it's a common practice, but it is an option for places where vaccines may be limited. So I think the first option A, or the most preferable option, is you get enough vaccine and you just vaccinate everybody with the full 2 doses. But if you don't have enough vaccine, then you can segment your population based on antibody levels. So I think it is for us, for the Ghana Health Service and Ministry of Health to really do that calculation. If they are confident that they can get in 45, 50 million doses and cover 70% of Ghana or 60% of Ghana as they are currently targeting, then we just go out and do 2 doses because it simplifies the process. If everybody has to sit and get an antibody test, now you're talking an extra 20 to 30 minutes per person in that process, right? Or maybe you have more volunteers administering these antibody tests, and it would add some time to the process. If we have enough vaccines, we just blanket everybody with vaccines and then move on. So it's really, I would say the first option is you have enough vaccine, you give everybody 2 doses, and you don't really worry about somebody's pre-existing status. But if we find halfway through, we've run out of vaccine, we don't know when the next batch is coming, then I think we have to begin to think more creatively, and antibody testing would be a way to make limited vaccines stretch a bit further.
You can call that number on your screen, and you can also shoot us a message. Now, here's a question I've been brooding over. I've been mulling over it for some days now. It has to do with the predominant strain in Ghana currently. And my concern, with the AstraZeneca vaccines we've taken stock of, for example, if the South African strain becomes dominant here, it could mean we could basically be fighting a bit of a Pyrrhic, battle, if you like, or chalking a Pyrrhic victory, because then it might be, the gains might be very minimal. Do we know, at least from your end, do we know what the status of the country is in terms of the number of cases that we are getting of COVID-19 that are from the original strain, the number of people we are seeing developing COVID who are of the UK strain or the South African strain? And if we don't, shouldn't we be considering that? Do we still have Dr. Bediako on the line? It appears we may have lost him. We shall try to reconnect with Dr. Yao Bediako, who is actually an immunologist at WACBIP of the University of Ghana. And that is quite a bit of a concern that I was raising there, because indeed, when you look at the statistics, when you go to the Ghana Health Service page, Dr. Bediako, are you back on the line now? Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Great to have you back. Now, I was asking, do we have any statistics, any breakdown when it comes to how many of the COVID-19 cases, active cases, are actually of the original strain, the UK strain, the South African strain? And if we don't, shouldn't that be a worry, considering how, for example, if the SA or the South African strain becomes dominant in Ghana, we could have problems with using AstraZeneca?
Yes, so the sequencing we're doing at WACBIP is trying to get to the bottom of that. The sequencing we've done from samples collected in January and a bit into February suggested that in Accra, we had over 80% of the samples we were collecting around that time were the B117 or the strain identified in the UK. We have not found any community samples that have the B1351, which is the South African variant. We found an example. We found somebody at the airport who had that variant, but they had been picked up by our airport testing, and so we're in quarantine. So we are yet to see that. Takoradi had over 90% UK variant, but then Tamale and Kumasi, of the samples we've looked at, had very, very few. So it appeared that it was concentrated in Accra and Takoradi, which probably speaks to the frequent travel from overseas to these two cities. So for now, it looks as though the dominant variant that we have in the country, at least in the south of the country, is the B117, the UK variant, which is still covered by the AstraZeneca vaccine that we've received.
Right. It appears we're having some concerns with our phone lines, unfortunately, this morning. If we can rectify that before we say goodbye to Dr. Bediako, that would be fine. But maybe finally from my end, what would be your piece of advice to people who are struggling with accepting these vaccines, should they be given the opportunity? And I go back to what some students in Nalerigu have been saying, that their parents have advised them not to take the shots because they feel it is dangerous. Generally, what would you say to Ghanaians?
Well, I would say to Ghanaians what I have been saying all along and what a number of my colleagues have been saying. The vaccine is what we've been waiting for. The vaccine is a key component of our fight against this deadly disease. And I would like to emphasize that this is a deadly disease. It may not have caused as much death in Ghana as it has in other places, but it has the potential to. As we saw between December and January, and even now, we've had a significant spike. We've had, well over 200 people dying just in the last couple of months. And so it's a deadly disease, and the vaccine presents the best opportunity for us to eradicate it. Without vaccination, Ghana will not be able to get rid of this virus. And we do not want to be the last country standing, as it were. We do not want to be the last ones with this virus.
Right.
So I would encourage people to get the vaccine, not to be concerned. This vaccine has been extensively tested. It is safe for use. It is not going to harm you or your children once we begin to vaccinate children. It is not going to harm anyone.
Right.
And it will potentially protect all of us.
Doc, let me just interject here. We do have some callers on the line now, so just a few minutes of your time more. Ransford from Choko. Ransford, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for joining us on the show. What are your concerns, your questions?
Yes, I want to ask that the vaccination did not have side effects.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Ransford. So, Doc, you might have to repeat your thoughts on the side effects of these vaccines. Obviously, someone who didn't catch your answer earlier.
Okay, so as I said, there are no reports of major side effects. There are sort of minor side effects, like a little bit of pain in your arm, minor fever or chills that last maybe a day or a day and a half. These are the main reports that have been coming out. So there's really nothing really to worry about as far as severe, serious, life-threatening side effects.
Dr. Bediako, thank you so much for your time with us this morning. We are immensely grateful, and we wish you all the best as you continue to work for God and country. Dr. Bediako is with WACBIP. He's an immunologist.